What's up, everybody? We have Reece Parker with us today. We are going to do a deep dive on the art of Realm of Reckoning together. Reece, thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you for having me. Amazing studio. Such a fun job. I can't wait to dive into it.
Yeah. So Reece, we've known each other for a little while. Reece is a director, a designer, illustrator. You're doing web design now. You're doing packaging. You're doing so much.
The wide range of stuff.
And we kind of came up in animation. That's how we met each other. So if you don't know, I'm Zach Dixon. If you're coming from Reese's side, I used to be an animation director. And now focusing full time on games. We met in this world of motion design.
That's right.
But you've worked with everybody. If it's a big company that you're imagining right now, Reese has worked with them. You got Amazon, Apple, Disney, Netflix, Hulu, all sorts of things. So first, we'll get to Realm of Reckoning. But first, can you just tell us a little bit about your path and getting into illustration and art direction?
Yeah. So I grew up just constantly drawing. I preferred drawing over almost anything else, and skateboarding. Failed at school and all of that stuff. Didn't love it. Fail math test, flip it around, draw my teacher, and she would hang it up, even though the math test was failed. Is very much my whole life. And then I stumbled into motion design kind of after high school. I didn't go to college, sort of self-taught. A bumpy first year, but my wife supported us while she was kind of being like, go be an artist and go do it. And I was like, okay. And luckily just slowly got my footing kind of independently, directly into motion. So more, like shapes and mobile, that term and all kind of that stuff.
Our board game audience will have no idea what a mobile is, so but you and I know what mobiles are.
I'm looking at Zach. Just very kind of, circles and geometric and all that. And eventually moved back into kind of drawing more because it felt more like kind of my start, my origin, very authentic to me. And then, it's been almost 10 years, and we worked together a few times in the motion world, and then you guys pivoted to games, and I was like so excited for you. It's really, really cool and not something you see very often, And then, you hit me up. Can you help with a game? And I was like, anything. I'll literally do anything.
And he had no idea what he was getting into.
No, I did not. To be fair, I did not know the work involved, but man, was I excited to jump in.
From my end, I've been looking for a project for you for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I'm always on. So I creative direct and art direct, and you did a lot of art direction on this project as well. Like all of our games here at the studio, and when we come up with a game, I'm always looking for someone or a style that has a very unique point of view, a unique voice, and you really have that in your work. And when I came to you, it's just like I usually, I get a mood board. And I don't know if you remember that first thing, but the mood board was just Reese. Like it was Reese and then this one image from an 80s board game, I think.
Totally.
But it was just like, I was like, I didn't know what I was going to do if you weren't available or not interested. I was like, well, all right, I guess I'm going to figure something out. But I really had you in mind because I was like, oh, we got this underworld kind of vibe.
Totally.
And I was like, see if Reese wants to do it.
Yeah, really exciting. When I saw that first kind of, that's the vibe that you were picturing, right? And you also had a lot of writing. So Zach does a lot of writing for the games and the lore and it really allowed me to kind of go instantly oh, I see what's going on here. And then, you just move through it that way. But it feels good so working across so many things, there's not necessarily always Reese do Reese thing. So when I see that from a client or a project, it feels really special. Go do your thing and here's some stuff we liked from the past and let's see what we get. And it's so exciting.
No, it was, speaking of that mood board, it was the Kingdom of Battlexia.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was that internally I'm because we got our meetings and I'm always just like this is what I'm thinking for this, and it's this guy Reese and I think he's the guy for this, and I put up that thing and this is what it's going to be, and I love that project.
That's so funny.
And you were like, oh, that's great, that's that's I want to do more of that.
Absolutely. So that was actually So I shout out Adam at Battlexia. He makes tools for motion designers, and he's one of my best friends in the industry too. And actually, that project, so Kingdom of Battlexia is basically a map, like illustration, right? That details a lot of the tools that he builds, but there's lore around his brand, right? It's very mystical, and that's kind of his thing.
So cool.
And he was on a plane, like traveling, and he wrote something just for fun, and he sent me that, and I was like, can I please draw this? And then it evolved and turned into Battlexia. And it's funny, once we were getting close to finish on this, I was like, Battlexia is like the kindergarten version of where we ended up on this. It was like, take that and expand it like times a million. So yeah, that's always really cool.
So the kickoff. So I just wrote a huge document.
Yes.
In Dropbox paper, this huge paper doc.
Yes.
I sent that over to you.
Yeah.
What was your first thought when I sent you that huge paper doc of all the things?
I mean, it's I guess maybe there's two frames of mind. It's like excited and there's a lot of thought here, and I want to do my best to be able to kind of insert myself into kind of what you've created, right? But then there's this other thing of like, oh God, can I get there mentally with it? Is it, there's a little bit of like an overwhelm thing too. But it's not like, that's first day, first minute impression. And then as we move, it starts to sort of bleed and we kind of have a mutual collaborative understanding of things. You grow into it, and it was really helpful to have the context as we were attacking each sort of deliverable or piece, right? Because then it helps me build the visuals, and if it wasn't there, it just becomes so much harder to kind of get into it. So,
well, and then another thing that we did is you got to play an early version of the game before we started on anything. So like literally nothing you see here, like you saw our temp art version. What was that experience like? We were hopping on Tabletop Simulator. So if you're in the board game, if you're listening to us from the board game side, probably know Tabletop Simulator. If you don't, it's this like piece of software that looks like it was made in the 90s. It's very functional and useful, but it's like a fake. It simulates playing a tabletop game. It's where we do all of our prototyping and iterating. And we iterate really fast. Like we're not like we know we're gonna make it look pretty later. It is just functional stuff. So what was that like seeing the temp art, but then also just playing the game for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's really just building the kind of context of what's happening. And it's funny to even play that. I like had to download Steam and all that. Like it's just sort of outside of my world. I'm familiar with it, of course, but it was, it was really cool to jump in and see what was going on and how you guys were thinking about it. Because while we're playing, I'm like, I'm just trying to kind of catch up. And you guys are like, maybe we tweak, and how about this? And, it's like very much in the mindset of building the game while I'm kind of just observing. So I think that was kind of the coolest part for me. And of course, yes, it's temp art, but I'm used to that. And that's very like production familiar, no matter really the project. You start ugly and gross and then you get somewhere. So that helped too, to be like, I'm sort of visualizing it while you guys are sort of like making the game, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the other interesting part is we are very much like building the train tracks, like just right ahead of us. Like we're still making gameplay changes, which I didn't even. I think we're going to make 2 players work. Okay. So we're figuring out. I
read that on
now.
the story.
Nice. Oh yeah. So so that's exciting. We're
that's
like
awesome.
we're constantly tweaking. So the other challenging part of this entire process is just like we are making changes. We're bringing in your work.
Absolutely.
Playing with it. Being like, oh no, like this isn't working. And we'll get to some specifics here, but it's just it's super iterative. So like even while we're playing that first game, like.
Right.
It was also like this is just like normal work day for me, Max, and Austin of just like oh no, this isn't working, and you're just over here like, what do you mean it's not working?
I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Yeah, what is that? But you're like, well, maybe we kill this, and maybe we keep, and it's cool, man. And yeah, I mean, it's very iterative, but you kind of lock into that headspace, and then you go like, just move with it. You know? Yeah.
So and where was your history with board games? Like how did I felt like I was like, oh no, I'm giving you the teach, and like this is the first time I've taught anyone that isn't like me, Max, or Austin. I'm like, this is the worst teach I've ever done in this game. And poor Reese, he's like, what am I getting into?
No, I mean, it's like I'm a learn by doing person. So like I could listen to somebody teach me how to play a game for hours and hours and then still not know anything that they said.
Honestly, same. But,
so it was totally fine. And as far as my like threshold for games, it's I'm familiar. My brother's really into this stuff. My wife she loves games like this that are a little bit more involved in like a lot more mythology and kind of lore. While I'm not necessarily fully in that world, it's a lot of fun to dive in and kind of live in it. Yeah, even if I'm trying to catch up the whole time.
And plus, you're playing with the 3 people in the world who have played this game like more than anyone. Like,
yes.
So it's
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so you got everything.
Yeah.
On this project, in a project as a whole, what's your first step? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
And I know it's different, so you can contextualize it in this project if you want, but also if you have any kind of overall like first steps.
Yeah, I think with this one, what I wanted to do was absorb the kind of board, right, the map, and get that feeling like it's in the right world. With just rough sketches, right? So it's kind of ideas. Maybe even starts like thumbnail, which is very, very small. Like maybe it's this or this. Like how's this shape? And then kick it your way. And it's like, honestly, a lot of times I felt like we were really in sync. Like, this is what I was getting from your writing. How does that look? And you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah.
So I mean, I sent you like this huge long list. Some of you even had options, I remember. So like Shattered Ward, which is the Queen's former palace, now shattered and decayed. Surrounding the palace is super decayed, but it was used to be glorious. And honestly, the first draft of what you sent back of that one, I think I only have one note. Is like, let's just like wreck it. Like, let's just make it a little bit more destroyed.
Or like maybe more magic or more sort of otherworldly elements. Yeah.
But I mean, that was the, like, I was like, oh, I think this is going to be one of those like kind of key like pieces of the world. And then and some of them I gave you some options. I was just like, I don't know, like fragmented forest, like maybe it's on fire, maybe like the trees have no leaves and black veins pulse through their bark like veins of a living thing. And so you just kind of like ran with that and and honestly kind of did something totally different. We got this like kind of like crystal-y like kind of vibe to it, which I really love.
And you could tell by what you were just reading. I mean, a lot of your writing about it was already sort of illustrative. And then if there was options, I just sort of went with whatever one was kind of resonating. I'm kind of a feel it person, right? So if it feels like interesting, then I kind of follow that threshold and see where it goes. Yeah.
That first draft, though, I was like, the heads floating in the water.
Oh yeah.
That was like, oh, that's
I had that same thing too. It sort of clicked, like this is right.
Yep. Like and I think the only one that we were like we got to rework this was Stone Garden.
Yeah, that was the hardest.
That was really tricky.
Yes. The layout, it's like this. So there's this balance on the board, and this is something that I'm new to. Is you want to be able to play on top of the art.
Yep.
And with a garden, you imagine like very lush and full and a lot of foliage, and it wasn't clicking the composition. So like where things are placed and the spacing and all of that. So that was definitely the most iterative.
Well, and one of the things that I've learned, especially coming from like commercial world, is that like what we are making when we're making this board, we aren't making the final look, right? Like we have to leave space for the pieces to exist on the board. And that's so hard to remember. Like I feel like like for Fractured Sky, if those who have played Fractured Sky, like it is a very busy board, and like it looks stunning like on its own. But then you start getting pieces on there, and then it starts to get maybe like a little bit too busy. And I feel like I've come away from that project of being like, we gotta leave more space. And it's hard. You gotta like imagine. So one of the things that we did is like you would send me a board, I would bring it in and then just like chuck all the pieces on it and then send you something back and we're like, oh no, like like I even thought we were doing a good job, and then we're like, oh no, we still need to strip back.
Scale it back.
Still need to like bring down the amount of colors and stuff we have on this board.
But you having an eye on it from the start was really helpful for me, like not go way too far down the wrong direction. Because I don't know, I'll fill this thing.
Yeah, no, like, but that's what you want to do is you want to like there's that natural pull towards like I want to like deliver a piece that looks stunning. And like we talked about this too, is like it's like designing a chair. It's like when you see a chair, it needs to look beautiful, and then when you sit down in the chair needs to disappear. And which is like this impossible problem, and you did it.
Well, we did our best. Absolutely.
Okay, so then The map. Oh, I wanted to, before we move off the map. And this is a me thing.
Okay.
My one regret. And someone pointed this out to me like while we were playing. It's like, wouldn't it have been cool? And I knew this like right as we were wrapping the board, and now I'm going to tell you.
Okay, I'm going to be mad.
No, and it's an entirely me thing. Is there are on the boards? There's three like at the top, 3 pillars at the top of each board, and 2 pillars at the bottom. And we could have done 3 regions at the top and 2 regions at the bottom. And I was like, oh man, that would have been so nice. We're not doing it, obviously. We would have to like start over on the map. But I was like, right as we were finishing up the map, I was like, oh, I'll let that one on the table.
Think of that.
Nah,
that's funny.
You know,
it happens.
It happens. All right, next I want to talk about the pillars of rule. So these are, we got these really nice, these artifacts.
Yeah.
These kind of, this was kind of our where we started to dive into iconography a little bit. You started to paint these alongside of small icon versions of them. So we have these like fully realized, these, this is the Queen of All Souls. She perished, all of her relics got shattered. And now you fight over control of them, and they each hold a special power. Tell me about your process on illustrating each of these. I love how they came out.
Yeah, those were I think sort of paramount for building maybe the rest of the game. So the board is like very environmental and sort of less kind of spot illustration or like one element, right? So with the pillars of rule, it's very like a crown. You're writing a crown, the queen's crown, or the scales of fate, or I'm sorry, not of fate, or the mirror. Yeah,
the scales of fate is on the
right
screen,
here.
right behind us.
It's in my head. And then those things kind of coming together helped me then like simplify them into an icon, which then bled out into building the rest of the iconography for the other language in the game. So I think those were really, really helpful to kind of narrow in, find it, tweak it, and then expand it in a way that maybe the board doesn't necessarily help us with, because it's still very sort of big, and it's hard to kind of go, what can I hold on to and then bring for the rest of the elements? You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's also where I think we found this like kind of hand motif.
Yeah.
Which is
very, I do that on a lot of my work.
I know, but it's like hands like traditionally are like the hardest thing to draw. And, and then you just kept adding more hands to things.
That's right.
And I'm like, Reese, it doesn't have to be this hard.
It just started making sense. And another thing was like about the hands is, there was this thing, do we bring in characters? Like full character designs, and they have to be unique for each faction. And I'm going like, that's a even bigger ask, but we can represent those differences in each of how their hands are realized, which a little bit you see here, but you see mainly in the player boards. Each faction is sort of very unique, and it's visualized through the hands, which I think worked out really cool.
Yeah, well, jumping to the player boards, it was very interesting. I really appreciate that we had a working relationship to be able to do this, and you felt you were able to do this, because I had full like cinematic scenes written up for each of the 5 of these.
Yes.
Right? And I even like drew a couple sketches of like, what if it looked like this one? And had like full, like each of these factions kind of have their own world. They have their own kind of religions. And I was like, what if we like brought those into these? And then you were like, but what if we didn't do that?
Right.
And then what if we just did these dope hands and this kind of like mural? First of all, like, how did you jump to that idea? And then, and so how did that happen?
It was late stage that these came together. So almost everything else was done, aside from maybe the cards we were iterating late too. And originally I was just going to go with your writing. And then I found that as I was trying to balance sort of those scenes that you were kind of writing about with the sort of mandatory design elements, that sort of how you play the game. I found it really difficult to balance those things, and my OCD brain just was like breaking. And so then I was like, this really feels like it wants like asymmetric and something that's going to balance kind of all of these flags with all the sort of game UI moments. And so I went that direction, just did a sketch and sent it your way. Like, what if we just did something like this? It feels like it ties the rest of the cards. And then you were like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and then I also love how this we get a like really close up on the world in this moment, right? You've got like big macro. Here's what the world looks like.
Yes.
And then you have a couple of these like, let's zoom in.
Yeah.
And like we don't get the full watchers, right? But we do get a like close up on their hands. And I think even that moment just gives you a little bit of like concreteness, but also still leaves your mind to kind of imagine what the rest of them looks like in full detail. Yeah. So I love that pivot. And they came together really nice.
Yeah, last minute thing, and it ended up working out. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but it was a little bit of a workload thing too, right? Because I was like, how do I do characters for all these? It's we're already way over on time on this thing. We put so much love into it, and then this solution just ended up really clicking. Yeah.
Did you sketch any of the scenes at all?
Yeah, I did.
You did?
I had a few, and I just wasn't happy with them. I couldn't figure out how to balance them and tie it into other things, and so I don't think I ever sent them your way.
Because when I'm imagining these, I'm always just like, when I'm thinking about each thing, I'm just like, I always imagine it as a film. Like it's always like, what if this, like, how could I just bake into each faction like something that's just like super cinematic and iconic that you could just like it's like a flaming head in riding in a gondola in a foggy area with like giant heads popping out of this like oh, that'd be dope in a wide shot of a film. And so like naturally that's where I'm like, oh well, that'd be great, like if I could get Reese to paint all those, that'd be great.
That helps me sort of understand your process a bit more, thinking of it like a film or like writing a script, kind of getting into the world of it. That makes sense. All
right, I want to come to the maybe the biggest struggle of this entire thing, which was,
I know what you're gonna say already. I already know it.
The colors. So do you remember the big problem that we had in this?
Yeah, it was it's clashing like faction colors and player colors and having them not overlap each other because they're not associated. But
they are associated a little bit.
Yeah, and needing them to identify sections. And you can tell we have like a very sort of monochromatic dark board, and the colors on the board help you know where you're at. And then the colors of a player are unique to the player. So it's like a 20 color palette. There's like a board palette, a faction palette, and then player palettes. And within the players, we came up with this two-tone solution, which is even more colors. But somehow more color was the solution to so much color. That was really hard.
It was so hard. We went through so many iterations of the color. Thank you for sticking with me on this, because it was just like we would get, because you don't know until you see it all.
No,
right? Like
it's
all together.
Really hard and you're working siloed on one section. And then when you bring them all together, you go like, oh yeah, this doesn't work at all. And then you have to kind of do it over and over.
Yeah, and from a gameplay element, you if you play games, you might have come across this before. It's like it's a 5-player game, so we have to have 5 individual player colors, and then there's also 5 factions. And so one of the things that are not necessarily associated with the player, and my first instinct is like, well, let's just like have them double up on colors, and then you get the problem of people just being like, oh, that's me. It's like, no. That's not you, even though you're the same color as it, and it becomes a really big hurdle when playing the game.
Yeah.
And I think the moment where it all clicked was like, okay, each of these player factions starts with an allegiance to each of these, pillars, each of these game factions. What if we treated the pillars that they were aligned with as the secondary color for each one?
Yes.
And if we can make that look good, then they should all look good and all feel united on the board. I still can't believe we did it, man. But
honestly, you saying it to me, I'm reliving it. And I'm going like, that was absolutely another late stage, like random collaborative iteration. I think I sent you just a rough of one of the player boards or something. And I was using a 2-tone just because I thought, this looks kind of interesting. And you're like, what if we hold on to that and we expand? And I was like, we might have just cracked this thing. And then it ended up unfolding and kind of working. But it was really challenging, and on other productions that aren't board games, I'm used to really tight palettes. I mean, it's just very brand friendly. If you're doing a big corporate spot or whatever, 5 colors.
Yep.
5 hex codes. You stick to those. And this was, expanding in like 20. And so, a challenge, but fun.
Another fun part
Yeah.
of this thing, custom font.
Yeah. And another, like, Zach was just like, hey, man, we're on a call, right? And he goes, hey, man, so do you want to like make a font? And I'm like, whoa, I don't know that I've ever made a font, but I'm known to like draw like custom lettering per job sometimes. And so I was like, I would love to. I'm very behind at the time. I was like, I'm still doing literally everything else.
Yep.
But if we find time, I would really want to do that. And then we ended up with an actual font, and there's other custom like title fonts and things like that. So there's like a mix of cool.
Yeah, you were already doing a ton of custom lettering just like on the board.
Flags
right?
and
I was like, oh, this is so dope.
Yeah.
Like, and I did come to you, I was like, look, all right.
No,
it wasn't,
he was sweet about
part
it.
of the scope. Like, if you don't want to do this is fine. But I was like, also, I'll build the font for you. And then you can sell it afterwards.
Yes.
Maybe make your money back. I don't know, on your time there. So,
which I'm excited about, by the way, and I plan probably to do that.
Yeah, we can build it out more if you want.
Should.
We got some like punctuation to hit, and like a few other things to make it like full on, but we'll get it there.
So all these numbers around the outside are that font.
Yeah, are that font? Yep. I mean, everything. I mean, it's all over the place.
And then there's a mono that's just a typical kind of font for
that you
really
chose.
Clear stuff.
JetBrains mono.
JetBrains,
which was open source. Which thanks for that.
I love nice mono fonts.
Yeah, no, it was great. I pitched you on some like crazier stuff, and you walked me back.
Maybe we tone it in, and because then we're pairing it with a bit more hand drawn stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Another highlight was these dials.
All Zach, by the way.
Well, I mean, you painted them.
I drew them, but he was like, "What if he knew how to build them. He knew the parts of them. He suggested the outer shape of it," and I was like, are you sure, dude? Do we just want to do something simple? I don't know how to visualize this. This was out of my world. And you were like, no, I think we can make it work. And then they're like beautiful.
Honestly, I didn't know. This is the one piece that like stressed me out the most. This one came together like so late.
Really
I was really stuck on this idea of like a single dial that had like multiple pieces. Mm-hmm. And I worked on it for like every day for like a little parts of like for weeks. Yep. And eventually I was like, let's just go with this two-tone thing. But it was actually one of the characters has these masks.
Which one is that? The Veil.
Yeah, it's the Veil Wardens. They have like these little eyes, and I was looking at that. Yep, I was looking at that, and I was like, man, that looks pretty cool. What if there were little eyes and there were like little masks?
You might have did you do this original like outline?
I did the original outline, and I just sent it to you, and I was like, paint on this and make it look dope.
Yeah.
And then you.
And then I had a few options. One of them was maybe more like crystal or some other, like I was going to pull from here.
Yep.
But then this makes way more sense.
Yeah. And I was still really worried that they weren't. I made a little like paper cutout version of it to like prototype to do it, and I think they're working.
This is the first time I'm seeing them today. They're really, really cool,
and we're gonna get to play with them.
Yeah,
here in a little bit. Okay, so we made it through. Oh, one before we get to the box.
Sure.
The miniature tower. I want to show folks this. The first version we had.
Yeah.
So they just were cones when we were like playtesting them, and then they were these towers.
Yeah.
And you drew this really cool tower. I even sent it off to our miniature sculptor. That's a bit of a spoiler, but you'll see why I did that.
Yeah.
When the campaign launches.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is going to be what it is. And then Austin has to come along, and he just sends me an image from Tangled, like Rapunzel's tower.
Yeah,
I don't know if that like seeped into your brain.
It had to have. It was like almost a copy of it. I was like, oh, let's pivot. Yeah. And then we did something entire. That was going to be these, right?
Yeah. That was going to be those.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I was just like, instead of like they're monuments, but like we just kind of changed up the lore a little bit. It's like when they rebuild an area of the afterlife, they kind of commemorate it with one of these
Right.
statues of the Queen of All Souls.
Yeah.
We worked in some of the other iconography with it and stuff. And
Which I think
love
makes more sense. But by the way, we did land on a really cool tower as well before we pivoted here from the Rapunzel one. So it was Rapunzel. Then we had a few more cooler ones that I think we locked on, and then eventually we pivoted to this.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so the last one we kind of saved for the end was the box.
Yeah.
So it really brought everything together. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
initially just sent me 2 mock-ups. One was like a little bit more board, like it was kind of more of a landscape or whatever.
Yes.
And then you sent me where we landed.
Yes.
And I knew immediately when I saw it, I was like, this is it.
Yeah.
There was a sword, and then I was like, let's just swap that for the crown.
Yep, that's what it was.
And then we were off. Tell me about making the board or the box.
Yeah, so originally, like when you start, when I like sign on and we're ready to get working, it's like, by the time we get to the box, we'll just reuse assets from the board, and we can be very smart about it. And I'm going like, okay, great. And then of course that doesn't happen because along the way you fall in love with what you're making, and then you go like, its potential is higher. So how do I just reuse stuff that doesn't necessarily fit in its entirety? So even elements that I'm pulling. So the crown is from the game, and from over here,
it's
the
from
pillar.
The pillar, yeah. Is that a straight lift, or did you redo it?
I redid portions of it, and then everything else is new. Even the heads are from the marsh, and I just redid them because they needed to be exact for the box. So that's really the story there. But I think it was also so we're done with everything else. We're locked. We're feeling really good about it. Colors are locked, style and how everything is executed, and elements. And then it was just going like, how do I represent this in the coolest way, really, on the front? And so you see like little bleeding goops around the side, and all the chain border, which we've been doing kind of all over the place. Just those elements you kind of pick and pull. And then you go like, this feels really representative of where we landed. And so I think that's why it clicked. And I only needed 2 sketches. And it was just like, this is the one. And then it took me forever to draw it.
I mean, and then I broke your heart a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
The box is traditionally one of the most important assets for, it's the thing that's on shelves. I mean, we
judge a book
mostly
by
online,
its cover.
But it's very much books by its cover. So it's the one thing, I bring in the most opinions about. Like normally it's me and you.
Yes.
We're
that's right.
We're doing it. And then this one's just like, no, like this is the thing that I need to make sure is connecting with the most amount of people.
Totally.
And you did this like beautiful lettering.
Yeah.
And it is stunning.
Yeah.
It was coming back a little unreadable.
Yeah, it was just too hard to read.
And and I was already way over time, so I did some noodling.
Yeah.
I think
we landed in a great place. What it was is I'm drawing for 5 months. You know what I mean? Like in a dark, I've got a blacked out office. I'm just like, I'm drawing for 5 months on this thing, and you just get really into it. You just you fall in love with it. And
I was so stressed, dude. I felt so bad.
No. And it's also
I really
I didn't ping it off of you before I went to finals. So like we had the rough sketch, right? And by this point we're so in sync that like I'm just giving you finals and you're going like, great.
Yeah.
But the box is the box.
Yeah,
so I'm I like get close to finishing and I'm like, I love it. And you're like, yeah, but can we read it? And I'm like, I think so. And they were like, I don't know. And so then, you had to tweak it and noodle it, and it ended up in a pretty close place, honestly.
Yeah. I there are some. Yeah, I mean, the folks will be seeing it. So
make the logo bigger. That's a very designer thing. Yeah. All that.
It paint because I'm used to being on.
Yes.
Like I've spent more of my career on your side
That's
of
right.
the client and artist relationship, and so like
for sure.
it paint like I'm just like. I'm like talking with my wife about it after work.
Oh
like,
my God,
no, because
no.
I'm just like Reese is giving me everything. He's giving me everything on this,
That's
and then
sweet.
he's just so stoked about this,
Yeah.
and then I have to like
Yeah.
in his eyes and like maybe make it worse.
Yeah.
And it's just like
Yeah.
that like breaks my heart a little bit.
I'm really and you sent I'm sending you flat kind of PNGs of these renders out of Photoshop, and then you kicked back. We were going back and forth. I'm trying to like articulate, here's why it's better this way. And you're like, well, check this out. We had it modeled in C4D, and this is what the box will kind of look like and kind of its final. And I was like, that cooled me off. I was like, okay,
Nice.
this looks great.
Yep.
this is not my thing. They have to sell this thing. People have got to, buy it. And you just got to kind of get out of it. I was locked in, Yeah.
Well, and it was I tweaked the type a little bit, and then just some of the values is really where it was. Because what I'll do is, as a coffee shop in this building, I will like load up stuff on my iPad. I'll walk out there, bother random strangers, and just being like, "What does this say?" And then it'll be like, some people are like, "I don't know what it said," and then some people like had it right away. Yeah. But then we like tweak some like values and stuff, and
That's probably the best way to do it. By the way, you've got to get people that are not involved like responding to it. It makes total sense.
Obviously there's a bunch of other assets like cards. The cards went really smoothly, and the icon set, like we were locked in on the icons. I think
icons right away. Once we had these pillars, the transition to them was really pretty easy. Now they're like rigid kind of. So the coins are a good example of what kind of our philosophy, right? Instead of a perfect round coin, as you might expect, we sort of had these kind of rigid edges, and we did that on all of our icons. Even if they ended up vector, they're still kind of hand drawn, which I love.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny on the vectorizing. So like a lot of these things needed to be converted from vector. So if you're not familiar with the way that the art works, so Reese mostly paints in Photoshop, where that is baked into into pixels, right?
Yes.
It is a canvas of 3,000 by 3,000 pixels or whatever.
Yeah.
So then we have to hand off, especially on these wood pieces.
Right.
We have to hand these off to our manufacturer in vector. And it's so funny, dude. I blew this tiny little piece up, no joke, like this big on my monitor. Just capturing every little detail of all your things.
Good on you, man.
It is so small.
Good on you.
It is the tiniest thing you've ever seen. Like, I'm just like, you cannot believe the amount of detail that there is in this file. It looks amazing.
Great, though, even at this scale, which I'm glad we paid close attention to, kind of going simple enough.
Yep.
Because these are way smaller than you're telling me sizes, and I go like, I know how to measure.
It is the biggest surprise ever, and it's why we've integrated Max does C4D and Max on stuff. We've integrated that early into our process because it's so nice to be able to see things looking like they are going to, with proper lighting, proper scale. Because honestly, it's always a surprise, even when we do that, when we get stuff back, and I'm like, oh, that's a lot smaller than I thought it'd be. Like, oh, that's a lot bigger than I thought it would be.
Absolutely.
You see it on your screen, but you're zooming in.
Totally. It's just a different world. It really is.
Yep.
Yeah.
So thinking overall on the project, what are some of the parts of this process, making a physical product, making a board game, that surprised you?
The constantly changing is the biggest shift from other projects, right?
Sounds like a client problem.
No, I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. And it's great. I mean, it wasn't so. There's a spectrum maybe of changes, right? It's like this rule shifted, and therefore this element is being used in a different way, and maybe we need a different color. It's not necessarily like this illustration is done, and now we needed a different thing because we changed the faction. Like it's not that intense. It was just really iterative in a way that on a normal production, you might find a stage where you move past the iteration and you get into like laborious finishing phase, where if changes are had, you sort of submit like a scope shift because you're redoing things. And that's just not the case here because it's not the nature of building a game.
Yep.
I'd say that's the biggest change, but also this is a piece of art and passion and love that will sort of live forever. You know what I mean? In a way that other projects maybe kind of come and go, and I archive them on my site. But as far as the world's exposure, they're up and they're down, they're out and they're gone. So that's another
this would be
so cool.
I know, it would be sitting on people somebody's shelf for 50 years. Maybe,
it's absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Well, and speaking to your iterative part, it's like a lot of the challenges, like we'll get stuff back, we try and throw them into Tabletop Simulator and then play with it, and then put it in playtesters' hands, and then it's like, oh, I do my best to make sure everything communicates, but it's just like, oh no, they're confused about this.
Absolutely.
Like this is a problem.
It's impossible to move through 2 brains or 3 or how many are on your team and get it right. It's gotta be exposed, the same as going into the coffee shop and showing them the font, and it's just like it has to be that way. And that's great. I just not, I haven't done a board game before, so it's a little bit new.
Yeah, I mean, it's new every time. Like, it's
I can imagine.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then the other thing is like this is your first time ever seeing it in person.
Oh,
like,
man.
what was that like?
Crazy.
What was going through your head when you got in here and saw
Well,
us?
I flew in to see these guys in Nashville, and I'm seeing the studio, and they got it on the monitors. And it's just like a little bit overwhelming in the best way possible, because it's just love and hard work. I mean, to simplify it down, it's just like this was 5 months of really, really putting my all into it because I knew it would live beyond most of my projects, and so. If it's the only one I ever get to do, I got to do the best I possibly can, and I'm proud of it. And seeing it's like incredible. It's so cool, and I can't wait to play it and own it and hold it. And yeah,
man. Still a long way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
We got Kickstarter on the 24th, so 2 weeks from recording this, but it'll be probably even less time by the time you see it. We got lots of fun things planned. And hopefully we can get you back on another one.
Yeah, I would absolutely love it. It was a blast. And if they reach out, other illustrators, like, jump in, man. This is a great team. It was really fun.
Thanks, Reese.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here. Thank you all for watching. And we'll see you around. See you on the Kickstarter.
See you guys.